Thank you, Abhinav. Thank you, Kavita Singh. Thank you for inviting me here. Fantastic chapel, and it's wonderful to be here in this space and share the little work that we've done over the last couple of years. Primarily, the first two projects uh, focus with the practice that we have as VA Group, primarily out of Bangalore and Pune, and the other two works is primarily from Pra Group, which is also out of Bangalore, and we have contact bases around the country. The capture of work is quite diverse, primarily arriving out of most of the work done conceptually at the stage where we do a lot of hand drawings myself. I spend hours together trying to capture lines and geometries and envision what can happen. Projects such as this, where Cummins invited me to do a large sculptural pavilion, which never happened, or projects where we've lost as competition, where we had to understand the genius loci of the site, or a capture of 42 acres of land for Wipro, which we are doing as a large IT hub. In all this, the experience of using charcoal or pencils or shades of felts to sort of inundate the idea of making it, the idea of composition. There's a whole dialogue that happens which is multicultural and also has no barriers of verbatim or any kind of text, but it's all the sense of experience and what we think is at that point appropriate and the learnings that we all imbibe internally to what we want to do. This kind of a process, which is probably stretched for almost an hour and a half sometimes to draw, this was the master plan geometry, sort of a connection that Wipro had asked us to do between two wings of a campus. And how does that originate? Doodles and out of ideas. Sometimes you have to redraw. You have to draw the same thing time and again to get the accuracy and the quality right. And as you draw, I think I experience the qualityness or the accuraciness of how it can be better. And for me, more than trying to discuss or trying to discover through dialogue, drawing helps me to understand how I can do that better in the making of it. And that product starts communicating for us the idea of making and takes that direction to perfection, hopefully. My office started drawing some cartoons of my little entourage. You know, from my home, from a very traditional background, I started understanding art, music, did diploma very early in my life, started looking at money, and I'm a big spendthrift, spend a lot of money, and also, in some way, I always said that I want to become a sketch myself and be part of that. And I just live in my office, sleep very less, not married, own 21 homes, but never lived in any one of those. I still live with my mother. And in all this, of course, travel expedition becomes very, very important. To draw wherever I am is very, very significant. And also that, you know, the travel log sort of stuck on me. I've done 168 countries, and that experience is tremendous to the kind of work that we also envisage. In all that, in the essence, one has to be ambitious and optimistic about what one wants to do or communicate or build, and never shy away from the fact that architecture is about making. It's about making that embodiment physically be visible, and not to shy away from trying to disturb the landscape and to build what one can do. This is one of the projects which we are still building. I've been building over the last 8 years, 9 years. This is the Nirlawn campus in Bombay, which is 26 acres of land. And it was a competition which we won. A lot of sketching was done again there, and that's the master plan of the whole campus, of various blocks of buildings which would come up in different points of time, how they would all bridge up together, and how they grow over layers, and each building takes a year and a half, 2 years. This is the building that we are doing currently, which is under construction. And the capture again was intensely to do everything in less glass and more terracotta, to sort of weave the whole landscape and the building together in such a way that the transitions of what tropical sort of space can bring into the place can become accurate. All that water that you see comes from the sanitation. It gets purified and aerated through these large water features through the campus and goes back into reuse. This is the tower which we completed around 2 years back. and the whole base or the structure of the bottom is all in terracotta and Jaisalmer, and the landscape sort of spreads into large, deep verandas, and the building above becomes offices and potential IT spaces. The space, of course, has many companies and corporates coming together in one large campus. In fact, when we do the master plan and the architecture, we don't delineate the idea of how landscape and buildings have to be together in coherence. Also, there was this old sort of chiller, a cooling tower block, which the owner's father had built, and we retained that back and sort of spruced it up and converted that into a large restaurant. Also, some of the old photographs and elements was introduced back into the lobby spaces to create large wall murals. So there's a lot of involvement of how the client wants to also enjoy making the architecture and involve him in the making of the lobbies and the common spaces, the bridges, and also the common areas. In all this, there is a lot of material vibrancies and variations in its making. Sometimes, you draw a complete master plan, and then you go back, and after a couple of days, you start staring at the drawing. In my room, I have this whole wall completely inundated with sketches, and you look at it and you say, this is not what you want to do. You might have spent hours together doing it, and you just chuck it away, and then you start redrawing again and spend another 5 to 6 hours drawing the same sketch all over again with a new idea. And these conversations, I think, become didactic to oneself. And in all that, you realize that, the new idea or the new spring of what you want to do to a campus arrives better. And most of the times, you start working with a team, and the team is involved in doing these kind of drawings in presence, and you make conversations and then build what you want to do as a fact eventual. So that was one segment of it when you look at scales. This is another project which we did in Bangalore, which is the National Gallery of Modern Art. We worked with 3 different governments. We were appointed as architects, and we were asked to actually demolish or sign a petition to demolish the 100-year-old building, but we went back and filed a petition not to demolish the building and sort of restructure it and save it back and build around it to create the National Gallery of Modern Art. It was quite a difficult task, but it was all about conversations between the old and new. We kept the geometry, the fenestration scaling, the colonnade, and the sizing of the width to the height factor as constant from what was there before, and made a very, very subtle insert into the landscape. Retained all the trees on the campus and built around it to create, again, a rhythm, a sort of a parallel language of what was there to what will be there. And within all that, bring in still the sense of modernity, but in a very austere and simple way. Of course, we didn't have big budgets. The budgets were very, very low. What was important was to sort of within that available parameters to create that sense of kaleidoscope, where one is always looking at each other and one is always trying to reflect back to see what was there 100 years ago and what will be there for the probably next 100 years again. And of course, the interior spaces which hosted the exhibits, or how you would walk into the exhibit space, or how you would experience the landscape, Bangalore as weather, climate, and the textures of landscape became very, very important. And of course, the art gallery itself is 70,000 square feet, and it's all naturally lit internally with multiple walls which can move, change, and reformat themselves to accommodate the different kind of artwork that it can exhibit. The old gallery, the old building hosts the permanent sort of selection, and we restructured the flooring, the walls, the ceilings. Nothing was removed from the site. A few elements were added back, but still one could recognize when it was done, and in that weave, the architecture was completed. This is a project which we worked as Pragroup. It's a kind of a prototype for a school. It's called as 1,000 Yogas, where they will be building these pavilions around the world. It actually teaches students to become teachers, to become yoga gurus. And again, the budgets were limited. We wanted to use material which could be common to any part of the world. And we kind of used very common elements, but kept the same material repetitive. The wall, the floor, the ceiling, and the skins, the parallel walls, the fenestration, edge lines, and also the sort of parallel screen walls which would act as shading devices were all made out of brick. And we used minimal amount of mortar again there, where only the horizontals had mortar and the verticals did not have mortar. So there was a sense of saving in making this kind of space, and also be very conscious about the cost and how the furniture could also weave itself as a natural material space with the bricks and the cotton elements on the edge line. That's the courtyard, which is the central space, and there are pavilions of classrooms around it, meeting rooms and smaller discussion areas, the waiting lounge, and also terraces where people could do practice in the outdoor, and also spaces where there would be intimate rooms where 3-4 people could be taught with one teacher, a large hall space where 80 to 100 people could sit together and practice yoga. So in a way, the color was always constant, and there was no plaster or no texture or no addition to the surface, and everything was kept natural. And also we realized that this one material can be very common to most parts of the planet, and it's very easily malleable, and you could easily articulate this idea in any other situation. As we extend, we also started looking at our own office. We had an old office. We started moving into a new place. We purchased 2 old houses which was built during the time of independence, started a bit before and completed after. We used the existing houses as a sort of a foundation to the whole above floor structure, and added 5 floors all in steel and timber. The steel was recycled, and here the timber, we picked it up from an old Javanese warehouse. And this kind of timber can be external, and it doesn't weather. It actually grows very well. And we created these 2 houses to sort of collaborate together to create a giant courtyard using their setbacks in between, used the terraces as another layer of the courtyard, and made timber as a load-bearing element. 2 floors above in the last level is all in wood, and it hosts a large amphitheater. We love music, and we've almost managed to host a concert every month in our office, and we invite 200 people, and we enjoy. And in all this kind of space, it's just, again, 2 materials. It's just timber and steel, where together it acts as a load-bearing structure to host 5 floors of elements above. The architecture and the experience was, for us, similar to what we do, whether it's a large campus or a small sort of studio space for yoga, or whether it is to work as an architectural practice space. The sense of arrival, to meander, to disappear, to be able to hide, to be able to be seen, and also to celebrate, and to be symmetric and processional in the geometry of that room becomes significantly important. In such a capture, we always like to keep the light very elemental, and also bring in the maximum of natural air and light. The whole office actually opens all the windows, and it's like sitting in a pavilion, in a garden, or in a courtyard, or in an outdoor space and work. Of course, Bangalore does afford that possibility, and to connect to that kind of an idea of context and design around it becomes significantly important. Thank you.